So what we have also been doing in the last several months is really here is also talking about some of the Reiki skills um, that we know, and even for myself, even if I'm teaching some of these ideas and concepts and skills and techniques and things, it's always fascinating to hear it again. So even if you are very experienced, or if you have never had Reiki, some of the skills that you can, that you know that you are going to learn when you learn Reiki. So today, what we are going to do this month, we've been talking about how to give Reiki sessions. And so we started with some of the techniques and the order of things that we go through in that first week, a couple weeks ago, about the order of how we do sessions. And then last week, Robyn talked about how to do distance sessions. And then this week, what we thought we would talk about is Self-Reiki. And, really understanding what Self-Reiki is and all the different ways that you can do it. And again, each of you may already have your own experience with it, but it's also one of the first things that people are interested in knowing. And it's really the beginning training of how to use Reiki energy is through Self-Reiki. And yet what I found in learning Self-Reiki is I understood it much better later than I did at the beginning. So at the beginning, I struggled a little bit with experiencing it or feeling it or knowing what I was feeling. And so, just using a certain amount of discipline to, do Self-Reiki and use Self-Reiki. And then for me, one of the things that really happened, again, we've talked a lot about the history of Reiki and the historical basis of Reiki. When I originally learned Reiki back in 2000, things like how you did Self-Reiki was very strict. Like it was very definite that you follow the exact hand positions of, over the eyes, over the ears, top of the head, back of the head, and in the order of it, and with your hands held properly. So when I learned about the evidence-based history of Reiki in 2003 and the Japanese Reiki techniques, where it was shown that Usui Sensei actually practiced Reiki through intuition in his hand positions by doing Biozan scanning, either over himself or to determine hand positions, or even Biozan scanning over other people when he was treating others. And so it opened the possibility of Self-Reiki hand positions being intuitive, that I could find the places where I wanted to give myself Reiki for the length of time I either had or wanted to continue giving myself Reiki. And it really opened the practice of it for me and the understanding of it. So I still love the standardized hand positions for Self-Reiki that, Mrs. Takata developed. She developed that as a significant innovation that she provided into the system of Reiki, because when she was teaching Reiki, the concept of just use your intuition and decide where to put your hands was probably a lot more challenging to teach than it is today, where we have more concept of intuition and following our intuition. So when she developed those standardized hand positions for treating others, what she called the foundation treatment, it also applied to Self-Reiki. And what that did as an advantage was, provided the ability for people to just simply use those hand positions and know that they would receive Reiki. So they make sense, and I still use both. I will still go through some of that standard procedure, and I'll show you a video of that in a minute, of those hand positions. But, I still use both, but equally now open is my ability to give myself Reiki anytime, anyhow, any way that I feel like it in that moment and what's appropriate in the moment. Because there are plenty of times I give myself Reiki where I just simply have my hands on myself and know that I have activated Reiki, but it's not very public. It's not necessarily something that is obvious to others. So if I'm doing this, that's of course a little more obvious and people are wondering what I'm doing. But I can have my hands, just on my body. And Robyn was talking about this once, that how, I often am just sitting with a hand on my heart, a hand on my belly, and just receiving Reiki and doing it that way, whatever I'm doing. Watching TV, sometimes when TV's on, it's like, okay, Reiki on, and Reiki for all. And, so I'm giving myself Reiki in that way too. But when I'm teaching Reiki, for those who are brand new to Reiki, practicing the using different hand positions so that you get to understand how Reiki is working for you. For a long time, I didn't have the same level of sensation with self-Reiki that I did giving Reiki to another person. So giving Reiki to another person, I had very obvious awareness that Reiki is flowing through me, either sensations in my hands or, that inner awareness where, you're thinking the intuition and the way that what is happening in the session, and you're deep in that Reiki space. And then with self Reiki, I didn't have that as much initially. Where the self Reiki was observable to me was in the results. So I experienced myself moving into a different or shifting into a different perception with self Reiki as the observable results of it, more than a sensation in my hands. And when I say observable results, I would also have to say that it's not always immediate. It might be the next day, and I might not even have assigned it to the awareness that I had done a lot of self Reiki. And the next day, the shift occurred. So I may not have been aware of the correlation of it in the moment. And as I've done more of it, of course, over 20 some odd years, I understand now the cause, the result, the relationship of it. And I also have more, I would say, sensation. When I say sensation, that's not always like a physical current, although like even right now, just talking about it, my hands are really, really hot. So that's a sensation that is observable or experienced. But sometimes the sensation is a thought. So sometimes, because, our intuition also gives us words in our own mind, sometimes the sensation comes through in a thought of like, oh boy, that feels really nice that my hands are in that location right now. Or maybe even, oh, I think I need to move my hands to this other spot. Or, wow, the middle feels really kind of like me next, and getting that little voice of move your hands. Or sometimes then I am simply using the self Reiki hand positions to, to do my sessions. So anyway, I do them all different ways. I will do self-Reiki and distance Reiki on myself at the same time. So for instance, I can wake up in the morning, even spending just a few minutes with it and activating Reiki on myself as I'm waking up, starting out the day, inviting the distance symbol to continuously, work with me with the energy of Reiki throughout my day. Sometimes it's doing that, and I use self-Reiki when I'm doing distance on others and thinking of others. And I'm doing that while I'm giving myself Reiki, and it's all working together, and it's the intention is moving through in that way. Sometimes I do self-Reiki on the fly as a thought. It's not always a physical experience like, oh, I have my hands on me. Sometimes I'm utilizing Reiki in how I'm thinking it. I also believe that self-Reiki works when I'm chanting the symbols or chanting in the moment. Like I might do, I'll use one of the Karuna symbols because we chant those out loud anyway. So like, let's say I'm just walking through the house and I'm thinking about Reiki, and maybe, when I say that, maybe I'm thinking about it for 30 seconds of chanting, and then I'm on to my next subject. So it might be like, Rama, Rama, or even Rama, Rama, so I might do that so that I'm walking through the fields of Reiki and receiving the energies and stepping through it and activating it in the home, activating it in my space. Same thing when I'm out on a walk or I'm in the forest. I can do that too. I had an experience a couple of weeks ago. We were teaching animal Reiki, and I was just in full on mind chatter. I don't even remember what, that's like, we always go back and go, was that important? I don't even remember. But I was in full on mind chatter, and I went for a walk, and all the trees were in bloom, like these pink blossoms, just the whole street, and spectacular view. And all of a sudden I noticed that I wasn't noticing the pink, and I wasn't looking at the trees and experiencing that absolute beauty of spring. And so it caught my attention. As I was still walking, I activated Reiki. I activated my perceptions in front of me, behind me, on each side. That's specifically one of the things we really teach in animal Reiki, is expanding your perceptions in that 360 view. And that was self-Reiki for me. That was another version of self-Reiki, like in a walking meditation of it. And suddenly, now you should see, because of course I translated it to, I have to take some videos of this, and just immersing myself in these pink blossoms. So there's lots of ways that you can use it. Doing a lot of self-Reiki at times. I know in this group, I share a lot about some of the experiences and caregiving with my mom, and, doing self-Reiki in the middle of caregiving with her during hospital stays, or sometimes just being there and being present and needing it for me to manage needing it for her. So a lot of on the fly self-Reiki, as well as now I'm in a better position in my life. I'm in a cycle. I always think of them as life cycles. I'm in a cycle where I have more time to actually be really intentional with my self-Reiki for lengths of time, and loving doing that. And so in sharing that part of what I'm speaking of with it is the awareness of truly allowing yourself to use self-Reiki in whatever situation you're in, however it's appropriate for you in that moment, to just know that Reiki is not requiring that we do specific rituals in order for it to work for us. The specific rituals are because that works for us, gets us there. It helps us to get there. Like, I love the feeling of Reiki over my eyes. And I do a lot with my voice, because that's like a lifetime thing, for many of us, I think, not just me, but even at 65 years old, I'm still always, having this self-Reiki for being able to be in my inner truth, being able to speak my authentic voice, to even speak it to myself, to hear me, is a lot of this, so I can hear my authentic self. So anyway, that's kind of how I work with Reiki when I'm teaching it. It's what we teach. We teach self-Reiki in Reiki 1. And sometimes we also teach the hand positions for Reiki for others in Reiki 1. But in the Reiki 1, the beginning class of Reiki for people who are just learning it, it's one of the main things that we teach them is how to give themselves Reiki, how to access the energy, and then utilize it for themselves. And so they have that tool for them always. Now, remembering that how you do the technique you use for self-Reiki is giving you access to the energy. Reiki actually means the energy. The hand positions are a technique. So how and what technique you use to access the energy, receive the energy, is appropriate for whatever circumstance that you are in and that you find yourself in. So I'm going to go ahead and Robyn, did you happen to pull those up? The hand positions? Do you want to screen share those and take over that part?
Sure.
Because we have this on our website. So if any of you need them, you're welcome to use these downloads like in your classes or anything, or for any other reason too. But Robyn's going to show those.
And then the other thing is that there's some questions and comments in the chat about, do you have to be through the hand positions and, the different details around that. And I know you kind of answered that, Colleen, but, you can go with your intuition on how that works. Palm facing up. Somebody suggested that they use a surrogate for their self-Reiki. They move through the hand positions and their surrogate is them. And then, palms facing up, however it works for you is totally fine. This is just one way to do it, but definitely follow your guidance.
What this does in teaching people the hand positions is it does give them a structure to follow until they feel comfortable doing it their way. So I still use these because they make sense to me, as well as my intuition. But when I'm teaching, I feel like this is one of the big gifts that Mrs. Takata gave us, is in developing these hand positions so that people could just simply start practicing Reiki without any experience and know that they could receive it. The difference is that by the time I learned Reiki in 2000, it was taught to me that this was like the absolute way you had to do it. And that was the difference. And then learning more about the history of Reiki, that actually wasn't even Mrs. Takata that taught it that way. That was something that, developed over the course of time through the lineage of teachers that I studied with. And so it was a really big, opening and freedom for me when I also learned that I could use intuition as well as the hand positions, and that they weren't absolute, but they are a useful technique. So.
Yeah. It's funny. I know you talked about how you always kind of have your hand. It was actually my husband who noticed that, because I'll just be like, driving. Well, I won't be driving. He'll be driving. I'll be sitting there with my hand over my heart and or watching TV. And I didn't even notice that I did it. And he's like, what is everything okay? Like you said, Joe, in the doctor's office might have a different interpretation of that. It's like, is everything okay? You sit with your hand on your like, chest quite a bit. And I was like, I didn't even notice I was doing that. And in all the situations where like I do have my, I place my hands there, it's totally appropriate. I'm obviously just like subconsciously giving myself Reiki. It's like, your mom does that a lot too. Like, oh, weird. So yeah. And then I kind of tuned into it. Like I started paying attention to like when I do that. And every time it's always, when I need to take breaths, when, it's totally at a time when I need self Reiki, and it's just completely subconscious. It's really funny. So I do
Yeah,
it.
I always tell Reiki to, like, and just by the way, I'm asking you to do what you do even when I forget to ask.
Yeah.
So it's not dependent on setting an intention. Like just if my hands go there, I'm that's an ask, even if I don't think to say it.
Totally. Yeah. It's funny because I consciously do it also, but these are the times where it's just totally, like my hands just. So, all right, let me go ahead and share the screen. Make sure I'm getting the right one. Yep. Okay. So this is on Reiki Lifestyle. And so you can go to the Reiki Library, go down to free downloads. And you can see here, it's Self-Reiki hand positions poster. So you can go through and see the Self-Reiki hand positions. And then we also have a short little video. Let me screen share, optimize that. I won't go through the whole thing. I'll just kind of show it so you can see.
Okay, I think the video is only a minute, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I would go ahead and show it. But it's fuzzy, right? Oh, there you go. So that's Heather, and Heather is now, she's Robin's age, and this was when she was maybe 20, I think. A young woman, dear friends of ours. So anyway, you're welcome to use any of these.
And you can download it.
Yeah, and I can see the video is back in the old days of editing.
Yeah, totally.
So,
awesome. So you know where those are. Oh, and yeah, I like that, Danny. She said, I look in the mirror while brushing my teeth, etc. for self-Reiki. Awesome. All right. Well, is there anything else, Colleen, before?
I think that's everything. Might be another fun one to put in Facebook of all the different ways that we do self-Reiki. Mm-hmm. Danny shaking her head, yes. Awesome. Yeah. So Robyn, were you going to go ahead and do an invocation with some self-Reiki?
So that's what we're going to do today, is we are going to do an invocation with the self-Reiki, some of the self-Reiki hand positions. We don't have time to move through every single one in kind of like the 3-minute fashion. So we'll just we'll just move through some of them. And so that way it's not like if we did want to go through all of them, it's not like, no, move here, move here, move here, move here. So we'll just do a few of them in kind of the different positions on the body. Now, if there's a position that is difficult for you, then you can just intend that you're sending Reiki there. Or, you can use a surrogate if you would like. So, but if neither of those things, like work for you, like if on the feet, it's like a difficult position to be in, then just feel comfortable that the intention is going there, and you can just keep your hands placed wherever they feel comfortable. Yeah, Anne, go ahead.
Did I understand, Colleen, that you said, with intention that you can do self-Reiki at the same time that you're sending to someone else, sending to others? You do both at the same time, self and others?
Yes, because I'm receiving as I'm giving. And so it's opening that ability to receive also, because Reiki isn't, it's so, the energy itself is so big that it can also do it. And so I can be sending Reiki through, through even as I am going through the hand positions for myself. So in other words, like I could use my surrogates over here. So I could use a surrogate and do it that way. So I'm doing hand positions on a surrogate. And yeah, I can receive it as I'm also giving it. Yeah. And also, when Robyn starts with this invocation, if any of you are brand new or don't have Reiki, and if any of you are doing this for others, you can know that they can also receive in an invocation like this. Any of you can go ahead and receive Reiki by following along with the invocation. So, and then if you are teaching this, know that your people can also receive as you are sharing something like this guided meditation invocation with Self-Reiki. Okay.
Great. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'm going to screen share that the hand positions while we're doing this, and then I'll also be doing them, but you may not be able to see it if we're like doing Reiki on my abdomen or on our abdomens. And then at any point, if you're guided to go anywhere else or whatever, you can feel comfortable doing that too. All right.